Hello, hello. So in the vein of talking about all things murdery, I want to talk about Hulu's show Only Murders in the Building. So I was in the office this past week and kind of sitting around with some of my coworkers talking about the shows and movies that we're all watching right now. And the popular show that it seemed like almost everybody was watching is Only Murders in the Building. There was one guy in our group who had not been watching the show, and he has now been properly shamed into watching it. I will be expecting his feedback next week. So what is Only Murders in the Building about? So if you haven't seen it yet, I will do my very best to give no spoilers. Only Murders in the Building follows a trio of people who live in an upscale building in New York City. They are all obsessed with this true crime podcast about a murder in Oklahoma. And that is kind of what initially knits them together. Lo and behold, there is now a murder in their building. And they decide, hey, isn't it every podcaster's dream to be on site from day one for the murder that they're investigating? So they decide they're going to start their own podcast called Only Murders in the Building. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to investigate this murder and find the killer. And there is plenty of murder to be had, plenty of mystery, but perhaps most importantly, plenty of comedy. This show features comedic heavy hitters such as Steve Martin and Martin Short, Tina Fey, Nathan Lane, and it turns out Selena Gomez. So I will acknowledge that I am too young to remember Steve Martin and Martin Short when they were in their heyday, and I am too old to have watched Selena Gomez on the Disney Channel. I'm also not overly familiar with her music, to be honest. But I do have a small girl crush on her from watching this show. She is fantastic and absolutely holds her own with these other, what I would consider to be much more experienced comedic heavy hitters. So 2 thumbs up, Selena Gomez. So the first season wrapped up sometime in 2021, and the second season just concluded. There were the addition of a few new characters in season 2 that I did not personally care for. The first is Cara Delevingne. I apologize in advance if I am pronouncing her name incorrectly. So I feel bad saying it, but I'm just not a fan of Cara Delevingne. So she's one of those actresses that I feel like you see her, not the character. The only other movie I've ever seen her in, or only other show, is Suicide Squad, and I think we can all agree that was a travesty. I don't know how much of that was her versus how much of that was bad direction. I feel bad saying it. But her final scene as the Enchantress, unwatchable. I read a review once that described it as watching one of the giant blow-up dolls that you would see outside of a used car dealership. And anyway, I can't unsee that. So did Cara Delevingne in any way ruin the show for me? Absolutely not. She was fine, but she didn't add anything to it for me either. I'm sorry, Cara Delevingne. I'm sure you're a lovely person and your career is doing fine. You don't need me to like you. I'm sorry. The other addition of a character in this season that I also just did not care for was Amy Schumer playing Amy Schumer. So I should preface by saying I'm just not a big fan of stand-up comedy. Generally speaking, that does not apply to everyone. There are exceptions to that rule. I think Ellen is amazing, for example. But I think most stand-up comedians kind of rely on vulgarity and cheap tricks, and they just aren't actually funny to me. It falls under the vein of what I call stupid humor. It's not very interesting. And Amy Schumer falls into that category for me. So I'm just, generally speaking, not a big fan. Again, I'm sure she's a lovely person. It's not personal. And again, her career is amazing. She definitely doesn't need me to like her. So she couldn't have gotten off the screen fast enough for me. She definitely detracted from the quality of the show for me. Did she, again, make the show unwatchable? No, but I am glad her role was no bigger than it was. So some of the characters in season 2 that I do like, one of the main characters, or one of the primary characters from season 1, was Jan. I kind of thought she'd be out of the show in season 2, but nope, she made a resurgence, and I can't help it. I love Jan. I think she's just the perfect amount of crazy. So I thought it was great that she made a comeback in season 2. I also loved that Theo, the deaf son of Nathan Lane, got to have another round in season 2, and that he had some expansion and some additional character development. And I thought he was great, and I want to give that man a hug. I feel so bad for his character. So yes, loved that. And then the third character that was new, very briefly, in the finale, is Paul Rudd. I have heard that he's coming back for season 3. And I mean, let's face it, can Paul Rudd do anything wrong? No, Paul Rudd is fantastic. I've loved Paul Rudd since I first saw him in Clueless back in the early 90s. Mid-90s? When did Clueless come out? I don't know, in the 90s. I know and of course he has been in the Marvel series, and he's fantastic in that. He also comes across as a super down-to-earth and cool guy. So yeah, fan of Paul Rudd. Looking forward to seeing how that works out in season 3. So moving on from characters, how did the murder plot go? How did the murder plot hold up compared to season 1? I really liked that they kept the vein from season 1 running into season 2. It wasn't just like a completely brand new concept. So I thought that was really interesting. I love that they involved so many characters from the building, and I loved how it all turned out. I did guess an accomplice early on, but I did not guess the murderer. So, you always want to be surprised. You never want to figure out the murderer in episode 2 or in the second chapter of a book. You want to be surprised, but you don't want to be so surprised that it doesn't make sense. So I'm sure we've all seen shows or read books that the murderer or the bad guy ends up being somebody who was introduced on the second page of the book or the second scene of the movie or show, and then you never heard or saw from them again, and you're like, oh, okay. And it feels so out of left field that's not even interesting anymore. And I didn't feel like that. I thought it was great. It made sense. I loved how they tied everything together. So looking into season 3, I'm definitely excited to see season 3. I will absolutely watch it again. I am starting to ask, how unlucky can this trio, Martin Short, Steve Martin, and Selena Gomez, how unlucky can they be? So I hope they don't keep it going so long that it ends up feeling unrealistic and goes super downhill. So that's my fear for season 3. But I'll definitely still watch it. And I also hope, and this is something that I can't stand in shows and movies, and I felt this way a little bit in season 2 with Amy Schumer, and now they're bringing in Paul Rudd, who again, I love. But what I hope they don't start to do is just throw random cameos in, let's just throw this random big name in here and not have to come up with an interesting story or plot. I hate that. So, did you guys watch The Expendables? I'm going to go out in left field here. The first Expendables was great. Sylvester Stallone. The second one, hysterical, my favorite one. The third one, I couldn't even tell you what the storyline was. They just shoved every character or every actor that they could think of into it, and it was not interesting. It did not make sense. It was not funny. It wasn't smart. They were just relying on throwing all these names in there, and I really hope that the show does not go that route. That's my big fear. My big fear for season 3. So anyway, that's kind of my feeling about Only Murders in the Building. Again, I loved it. Definitely would watch it again. And definitely we'll watch season 3. So 2 thumbs up for me. Very watchable, very recommendable. So yeah, leave me a comment and let me know what you guys thought of the show. And, feel free to ask any questions. And please like and subscribe. And as always, have fun, stay safe, and don't murder anybody. All right, bye.